On the low prognosis patients, if patients have less than 50% maturity, we do IVF rescue the next day. So basically on this group will be the ICSI group. And so far we've had I would say about 4 out of the 200 oocytes that we have injected, about 4 to 5 euploid embryos. And we actually have one clinical pregnancy. The baby is already delivered. The patient had no mature eggs the day of egg retrieval. So we decided to mature them overnight, culture them overnight, and inject them the next day. And out of the 3 embryos that we sent out for biopsy, 1 came back euploid, transferred, and the patient has a baby. We've never tried the RICSI or PICSI method to wait 4 to 6 hours and see that, but we have tried the ICSI oocytes. And so far, for that patient, that was the only chance that she could have that baby. And she was 45 years old also.
Yeah, that's an amazing story. I love that. Because I was like, that stuff doesn't work.
Yes.
But we did it. On your recommendation, it worked. How about you guys? Any thoughts on the paper, Patty or Natalia?
I thought the timing was interesting to be recorded. I wrote that there's lack of precise PB1 timing in EXE group. The exact time of PB extrusion in the extended ICSI group was not recorded due to overnight extrusion, making it hard to determine the exact PB1 to ICSI interval.
Good point, yeah. They didn't know when it came out, right?
Yes.
Could have been 5 minutes after they walked out of the room. But that's kind of how we do it too. We're looking at, we just let them go overnight, but in this group, in this paper, that was their lowest pregnancy rate. In fact, they didn't have any pregnancies with it.
Exactly, yeah.
It's kind of like interesting to see that. Their best was in the regular ICSI, if I remember correctly. So the ones that extruded the polar body in less than 4 hours. Is that right?
Yeah.
But it talks about pregnancy. It doesn't really talk about, they took their immature eggs, but what happened to their fresh eggs? Did they transfer embryos from that first and then transfer these embryos? So it's, the pregnancy rates in the less than in the peak in the R group are actually pretty good. The implantation rates 35% are very respectable rates, but it'd be interesting to see what for that lab or that institution, what is their normal implantation rate, and then also to see what happened to those fresh eggs, the ones that were in tubes, the regular ones.
And it doesn't even specify the IBM protocol that they used. Like the kind of media the eggs were, which culture media. It does not have those.
It doesn't sound like from what I gather, they just put it right back into the media, the culture media. But I think they used the Vitrolife media actually with the protein plus, what I was gathering from that. How about you, Brandy? Any comments or ideas on the paper?
I thought it was interesting when they ended up doing 1 hour checking. They kept on opening the incubators just to check.
Yeah, great point. Incubator's got to recover, but every hour it probably it was finally recovered, and then we're having to recover. Good point.
Yeah, I wonder if those pH changes and with recovery, did that have something to do with the delayed polar body extrusion because of the fluctuation of temperature each time you opened it each hour?
Yeah,
compared to just leaving it in a time lapse.
That's what it would be nice, a time lapse incubator for this kind of study.
Yeah, because I always wonder, like how much time are we losing when we have someone having to check the egg every single hour to look for a polar body when we have so much to do in the lab already? It's kind of like, at what point is it too much?
Too much, yeah. Yeah, you know what? Actually, can I share my screen, Ligia?
Sure.
there was. Oh, here we go, share. Yeah. So something that I thought would be, the mitochondrial piece was really good in this paper, but something that I like to share when I'm training to do ICSI is the when it's going through meiosis, right? The germinal vesicles, it has 4 sets of nuclei in it. And I would expect that in the P group and the R group, just because it morphologically has a polar body doesn't mean it's actually mature yet. And so if you were to look at, this, like technically the one in the middle has a polar body, but it really hasn't segregated those chromosomes, whereas a true M2 would have those chromosomes separated. And if I were to go to to look at an oocyte that has a polar body using the spindle view, I could see that the spindle is actually still connected to the polar body and still hasn't gone through that segregation of chromosomes. And so I'm wondering if that's why the greater than the 4 to 6 hours is probably a better system than the less than 4, because it's still done that polar body extrusion, but it hasn't fully segregated those chromosomes. And this is what it should look like under the spindle view. This is actually the same oocyte here, where you have the spindle separated from the polar body, and that egg probably should do well. But we can't see that morphologically, and it does talk about that a little bit in the sense of nuclear maturity versus cytoplasmic maturity. And you can't see that just looking at it through a microscope, especially every hour. If you're looking at it every hour, like, oh, it's got a polar body, let's do it. Well, maybe it still needs a couple more hours. So that's why, in our lab, if we were to do this, look, if we do it at 1, maybe check those again at 4, and if it extrudes a polar body, maybe do those ICSIs, but maybe change the way we're doing some of it.
The clinical setting, yeah.
So I'm gonna stop sharing that as a. Do I just hit stop or? See that? Yeah, sorry. Okay, thank you. What else?
Oh, well, one of the strengths I thought was the mitochondrial distribution, showing that could be like something that we can measure maybe later on with the AI technology and seeing, because it did show the effect of how where the mitochondria was when the oocytes showed peripheral or homogeneous mitochondrial patterns showed that those did better, and then the ICSI oocyte showed clustered mitochondria, suggesting incomplete cytoplasmic maturation. So maybe with the technology later on, there's something that we could actually measure.
Yeah.
So it did show that in the paper. I think that was a good finding.
There's a lot of interest in in vitro maturation work, and there always has been, not just in the low prognosis like this paper, but there's companies now building their whole business model around that, like Gametogen, where doing minimal stimulation, but then retrieving these little tiny follicles and maturing them in the lab. So this kind of paper helps us kind of create that pathway for that. and finding out which were the best eggs. Might be doing ICSI multiple times in a day, which is not very efficient.
There's limited like clinical outcome since within the whole study, only 6 babies were born. But it's just probably because due to the small sample size. And I also feel it's not really a randomized controlled trial. So it could potentially like skew things, make things potentially biased in a way.
Definitely. No, it wasn't randomized control. You're right. That's a good point.
It was not really.
It becomes really more retrospective, but it's hard to do randomized controlled trials, and that's the real rate limiting step. Which personally, that's just my personal point of view is because it is hard to do a true randomized controlled trial. That I'm always questioning anything that's in literature about, particularly assisted reproductive technologies. A few years ago, there was a randomized controlled trial, blinded randomized controlled trial, the best way to do a study, right? Using HCG in your transfer media, that it was going to improve your implantation rates. And there's even other medias out there like embryo glue for improving implantation rates. And some people swear by it. And we used it with not the embryo glue, but we used this HCG in our transfers and it didn't do anything to it. So it was just like an extra step. But so sometimes when I hear blinded randomized controlled trial, it's like, was it really a blinded randomized controlled trial? Just because they submitted it that way doesn't mean it really was. And so because people know that's more likely to get published that way, that's the way that they present it. So it's a little bit, the science community can be, they're wanting to get things published. And so in this respect, they even say it wasn't blind, but so it's good work. Most of the work I've done has been retrospective. You're finding something like, oh, that's interesting. Let's look and see what it was doing before and then evaluating that. Just because it's retrospective doesn't mean it's a bad study. That's science, right? I was talking to someone today who's actually an engineer and business person. And a scientist, if you look at the definition of a scientist, is someone who gathers data, evaluates data, and makes a summary of the data that they look at. And I said, everything you look at is in a spreadsheet. You're evaluating that data. And I said, I hate to break it to you, but you're a scientist. We're talking about publishing abstracts for ASRM. And I said, you're a scientist, so start thinking yourself like that. Anybody in here feel like a scientist? I hope so.
Definitely.
That's good. That's good. Is anybody I hope anybody in the audience sounds like is a scientist too. So we're, what I would like to do is that if the audience has any comments that they would like to share, I would encourage them to. Do we have any comments that anyone's put in, Lygia?
No, not yet.
What about, does anybody want to get online and say something? There's some of their comments about the paper. What else we got here?
I guess the question is should immature eggs be routinely cultured and monitored for possible injection? I know it's our standard here, but in general, should we be doing this for low prognosis patients?
Well, I know that one lady wouldn't have a baby if we didn't do that. But I know that Ellie has expressed some concerns about epigenetic issues. Like, what do you think of that, Ellie?
There's no data out there, and that's why until we have more data and see, is this epigenetically, there is even for ICSI, there is epigenetics concerns, and we do that routinely. So, because this is not a lot of clinics do this, there's no data to see if there is any epigenetic disruptions or not.
Right,
The more we do it, the more we can find out.
yeah,
And that's
we're not gonna know until we,
until we
yeah, so,
implement it.
so that being said, should it only be done under an IRB?
No.
No,
I don't think so. I mean, you think about ICSI was actually created without an IRB. Assisted hatching was brought into the world without IRBs, before even really IRBs existed, so. But, you know, there might be some de novo things that do come out of that. You know, there's been some discussions over the years that even ICSI causes some imprinting errors with Beckwith-Wiedemann syndrome and Engelmann syndrome. But, you know, nothing foolproof saying that.
Yeah.
It's kind of like different immunizations cause autism. A lot of speculation. But so yeah, I think we should keep doing it. I think if I go forward, if I were to, you know, we keep doing this, what I'd like to do is, what they didn't put in here, like the M1s versus the GBs, and I don't think we have it positive either. So like separate the M1s and the GBs. From your experience, do you have a feeling? Are you guys work in the lab at Positive? Do you have a feeling that M1s versus GBs do better?
I think
GBs do better.
Really? Okay. I was gonna say the same thing. You're supposed to say something different.
Oh, I can argue
I'm
the
just kidding.
I think from what we see.
But so my thing is about that, the GVs do better because we go overnight, right? So that's why we probably feel that way. Maybe the M1s, we should look at them again before the end of the day.
Yeah.
And the GVs, we go overnight. I would like to, you know, push this a little bit further and say, what does the M1s versus the GVs do? You know, we might actually, you know, would you say 200 oocytes have been around there? And we have one baby and a couple other more euploid embryos, which is good. That's amazing.
Yeah, this paper.
There's actually a lot of blastocysts in that. You think about euploid is around 50%. So if there's two more euploid embryos, there's still a few more blasts in there that we created that were probably still aneuploid. So, you know, they're fertilizing, they're making blastocysts, which weeds out a lot of the abnormalities.
Yeah.
But I think that my gut says the GBs do a little bit better when we do in this paper, the E group. I know the students don't have a lot of experience in that yourselves, but so what we do, you know, you've seen us do some rescue ICSI, that's what we call it. And we culture them overnight. The next morning, we'll do ICSI on those. And had some good results with it. And if you'd asked me to that, well, just even just a few years ago, I would have never considered it. So I've had a couple have a baby from it and a couple euploids.
Another question I have is, would these results be expected in normal prognosis ovarian reserve patients, egg donors, for example? I just wonder if these KPIs and stats would be equivalent, or would that kind of shift and make that PXC and RXC a little bit more comparable, and maybe even bring up the EXC group as well?
With the good prognosis patients, you probably do better, especially like egg donors should be better. You think about, you know, when it comes to maturity, if you go back to the time of trigger, and this is one of my main focus points when, you know, an egg that is aspirated at 36 hours, we were aspirated at 36 hours. That egg that's extruded the polar body is probably your baby maker. And so if you're to strip them, do your hyaluronidasing and cleaning of your eggs, then I personally think that those are probably your baby makers. That's just my gut feeling. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I agree.
Yeah. And so, so if you wait till 1 o'clock, if you didn't see those eggs till 1 o'clock and then you're stripping the cumulus off, you're seeing these polar bodies that weren't there earlier. So those are probably more like that less than 4 hours. They're not going to do that great.
Yeah, the ones that aren't completely cytoplasmically mature.
We have a question, actually, too. Doug Macon. Go ahead, Doug. What is your question? Can you hear us?
Doug?
Feel free to enter your question in the chat.
He can't unmute himself.
Type the question.
It's a top. Let's get on the screen. Good for you, Doug. By the way, this paper was actually recommended by Doug and Samantha in Houston. So thank you for your recommendation. While we do this, what I'd like to do is encourage anybody that's in the audience to send us papers. We're going to do this every other week. I hope that you'll come back again and again, but share this with your friends that we're doing this and recommend papers you want to go through. I think that even bring back some of the old papers. I know Peter, or not Peter, but there's some bringing back some of the old papers to Kim Pomeroy recommend talking about some of the old first media papers. Where did media come from, right? And so it'd be good to see where we were and where we are today.
Doug, I think we can hear you now.
You can unmute yourself.
You look great, man.
Thanks. I actually just asked the question in the chat, but there's a paragraph that talks about mitochondrial distribution in the cytoplasm of the IVM oocytes. I was wondering if any of you guys who have had more experience have had any experience with that kind of thing, and if you have any insight on that. That's something that in the paper that really stuck out with me. I kind of found very interesting.
I personally haven't. They use a confocal microscope, which is a really expensive microscope, and I don't think that they stained those and then use confocal and then use those for their ICSI. I think they took 3 eggs from each group, evaluated them, and they showed that, which is really cool, how the different hours had different dispersal of the mitochondria. I mean, I believe it was the P group that had the most evenly distributed, right? Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah.
Whereas the E group was very isolated. It looked like it was very peripheral.
Yeah, the R group.
Our group was peripheral. So and my question to that was, what's normal? I've never seen confocal microscopy of the mitochondria. Like I didn't go back to see if I could find my confocal microscopy of the mitochondria in a regular M2 oocyte. So that would be if I were to dig deeper, I would look into that. But I don't think you can stain them and then go and do ICSI on them. I think once they're stained, they're done.
That was my next question. If you could use them clinically after staining them, but yeah, I guess not.
Well, that's why I shared the spindle view. The oocyte, it actually is from Hamilton Thorne. Like, I used to have one of those in my lab in North Carolina, and I would do ICSI. I'd find the spindle and I'd do ICSI on it. And the sale was that you had better embryos. It didn't seem to prove it for me. So, but I could see a use for that here. And so maybe there's a technology that you can invent that will look at mitochondria without harming the oocyte, or any one of you guys, because you're the future leaders here.
I hope it's you.
That's easy.
So, just something to do in the next.
Yeah, not your free time.
Maybe Erica, right? Is that Erica, the AI egg.
It's possible, yeah. No, you're right.
What are we drinking?
There are some AI stuff out there. That's a great segue into that. Like they only take one snap photo of the oocyte at one point and say, this is your best oocyte.
Another question from Doug.
Hi, it's not Doug, it's me, Sam, but I'm using Doug's computer. Like for example, in our case for our clinic, when would we draw like the line when we are like making the rescue ICSI like in a regular patient? Let's say we get like
You stop.
Or-
7 or 8 that are mature. Are we gonna like do rescue ICSI in that one oocyte that's left? Or
No.
are we just gonna do a regular ICSI as we should?
I'm not saying you have to do it at all. What we do here is, when it's less than 50% or more than 50% immature.
I would say if you want to get better and do more reps, inject it.
The more you do, the better you get, right?
I injected an M1 this week and it fertilized. It didn't make a blast, but it fertilized. Yay.
Yeah, that's how we used to teach how to do ICSI. You know, you would say you would sit down and, you know, ICSI was the first paper published on ICSI was in 1992. And to do ICSI, to learn, you sat down and did the immatures at the end of the day. And you would get FERT a lot of times in those M1s. GVs tend to lice a lot, in my opinion, in my experience. But M1s will fertilize. I've never had a blast or a pregnancy from one of those down there.
All the participants here today right now are unmuted, so if you have a question, feel free to bring it up now. Everybody knows.
What's that?
Everybody knows everything.
What was I saying for Doug? It was, yeah, I was talking.
I guess, does anybody in the audience now do this your idea?
Yeah, does anybody, you know, good one?
Does
Yeah,
anyone
say
in
a
the
little louder.
audience, now go ahead.
Does anybody in the audience currently work in a lab where they are injecting immature eggs or waiting till the next day to inject the eggs? Anyone hear me?
Can you see how many participants are? 27?
We'll try it if you have it.
We're recommended.
Yeah, well, like I said, learning from this, like, we'll probably change some of the ways. Maybe we look at M1s and GVs. Like, I'm anxious to see how that
Before we
goes.
leave, we could check them if they extruded polar body.
Yeah, I don't think we should check them every hour.
No.
If you want to be done by 4, check them at 3.
Yeah.
You know, but,
We even hold the same mix of dish, leave it and wait for it.
yeah, that's right.
Mhm.
Yeah, so you're not wasting materials and things.
One thing I was very curious about was how did they check these oocytes and like how were they able to time kind of when did they say that they checked it every hour?
Yeah.
I see.
did.
Yeah.
Because like okay, for like let's say we use this as like not for like research, but like a clinical example. Like I just don't and I was talking to Chris about this. I was talking to the clinical team about this paper. Like it's so unrealistic to expect or to have an embryologist check the oocytes every hour on the hour and then time it. And then what happens if the polar body kicks out after hours? Like, are you gonna have someone
Coming back.
coming back? And did those just like,
Yes.
you know, like I don't know, like if there's like a practical, how would you practically implement this kind of thing into the lab if you're gonna do the PXC or the RXC?
Like let's say that we have like embryoscope and then we are like able to look back into what time the polar body was extruded, and then you can designate one embryologist that's gonna come back to do this exact like this specific patient, but I think it would only be in like very specific cases. Like she only had like 5x.
It's a great point. You might be able to find that if
Because
you're,
if you have
if
a
you're,
35-year-old and she had like 18x and like 10 are mature, I don't think you would proceed like that.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be
But even
difficult to
if,
accommodate the workflow for sure.
even if you have like the time lapse, right? Is the time lapse gonna let you know that the polar body extruded and you now have 4 hours, you know? Like you wouldn't know, you'd have to come in and physically
Yeah.
see it, right? So it's just kind of,
You would have to like look
it's
back.
very interesting, yeah.
but if you were to look at if the PXE was your best fertilization and pregnancy, you know, where, what was that? That was 4 to 6 hours, right?
Mhm.
Right.
Like what I would do if that's your best is drill it down to 4, then 5, then 6, and then narrow it down. You might find that 5, there's a sweet spot in there that's your point. So you can create the protocol around that. What's that?
The trend.
The trend, yeah, yeah. And then from there, you can build your protocol around that. I would expect that, you know, if you had, that might be actually a really good use of time lapse. Like time lapse is one of those things where it's great for, you don't even have to take the embryo out, right? It's a lot safer for the embryo, but time lapse hasn't really actually improved pregnancies or fertilizations that per se, but that'd be a really good use of time lapse. Once the polar body is extruded, you know, then they go plus 4 hours, you know, plus 2 hours, once it's extruded to know when that actually occurs. Drill down on that. But I think before we are talking about that, I was talking about an egg that is a GV shouldn't be a germinal vesicle. Like 36 hours, when you start getting mucification of the cumulus, like you shouldn't have germinal vesicle. But if that is our best pregnancy, then it's because everything is so much our best fertilization and pregnancy so far that like it's because it needs that extra time. But you know, we get a lot of these sometimes. That case that had the baby, they were all GVs, every single one of them. I believe there were 7 eggs, right?
Mhm.
All GVs. But we get a lot of these cases with M1s and GVs. So
And this work that Gambito's doing, they're not trying to get M1s, they're trying to get GVs.
GVs, yeah.
They're trying to go into small follicles, they're not trying to grow them out to 11 millimeters, right, in between.
There's no ACG trigger.
No,
It's
there's not.
all immature, tight cumulus. You're maturing them in culture. When I was in the bovine industry, we used to in vitro mature oocytes, and you know, we just strip off the cumulus, and most of the eggs did have polar bodies. It was all very much timed. So we made sure we put them in the night before at 4 o'clock, and by 8 o'clock the next, or 10 o'clock the next morning, they would be ready. That's how quickly they mature overnight. And maybe that'll be that way with gametogen. I know they're working on. We're actually probably a positive will be a site for that maybe.
I wanna know what's in the media, what's in the juice, how much LH?
They're probably, yeah, I know when we used to do it in the bovine, the cow world, there was some estrogen, there was some FSH, some LH. We created an environment for it.
Like say your GBs, you put at a higher concentration of LH, right, with the media, with your M1s, you draw that back to try and make them catch up.
It's possible, yeah, you might have a specialty defined media.
I'm gonna save my ideas.
Save your idea
For a reason.
for the thing you're gonna invent.
Yeah.
Yeah, you go, girl. Oh my gosh.
Never abstracted.
All right. Well, good. I think our timing here, 12:30. I didn't want to take up too much of everybody's time today. Probably about 45 minutes or so. Give everybody one more chance in the audience to ask a question.
Come on.
And I want to thank Doug and Samantha for participating. And glad everybody came today. Reggie's got a couple announcements here at the end. We're gonna do this every other Thursday. Something we do with our students here, and glad that we can share that with everybody outside.
Our pleasure.
Um,
So you were saying our next presentation is in 2 weeks?
Yep.
And the topic will be to rescue or not to rescue immature oocytes, prospects and challenges. Additionally, we have lab certificate courses coming up in May, June, and August. So those are the dates on the screen. All the participants today will get a 25% discount on their course if they register. So please do so. And once you register, I will reach out and get that discount to you. If you have questions, please email admissions@ivfacademyusa.com.
Yep, send us your comments and your suggestions for papers to review. Love to hear from everybody.
Thank you so much. Very nice session.
Nice, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us.
Have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, take the time.
There's pizza out there, for everybody. I thought we were gonna bring it in here, but then.
We didn't want to eat. We wanted to look professional today.
No, I'm starving.
And then I think.
I think that's the way nocturnal clubs are though, like
I know.
eating and talking.
This is our first one. Next time we'll